Once the tinnitus sets in, then it's usually not long after that that the ringing in the ears becomes voices in the head.
Today we're going to talk about mental health. The World Health Organization defines health as a state of complete physical, mental, and social well-being. Good mental health is a lot more than not being sick.
Lookoutfa Charlie.
This is not normal.
Alright, before we get into the meat and potatoes of today's video, I would like to knock a couple things out of the way. One, I'm really sick, so gonna have to tolerate it. But I don't want to fall behind. So I'm really sick. But I'm just gonna try to get through this video. It's not good, but the information's there. Something that I'd like to talk about is a lot of my videos have had things mentioned in them about people, normal people, just snapping. The idea that a normal person who has no psychological issues or no issues can just seem to snap overnight. It's not possible. It's a narrative, and people that believe that are buying into something that just isn't factual and didn't used to exist. Period. I received this comment from someone, and I blotched out their name and their avatar. But under one of my videos, my recent videos, they wrote, normal people can have psychotic episodes from nowhere. That is well known. No, it's not well known. And if you believe that, think about you sitting there right now and then just snapping and going berserk. It's absurd. Do you see healthy animals and healthy living things just snap and go mad? No, you don't. It does not happen in nature. They want you to start believing this, and clearly people are. So this person isn't a regular on this channel. It just goes to show that there are people out there that buy that bullshit utterly and completely. I thought, hey, you know, I wasn't around. I wasn't around in the 50s and 60s. I haven't been around forever. I've lived through a lot of this, what we're dealing with now. So I thought to myself, these things were not a reality when I was a kid. It became a reality after like going postal in like 89, 90. You know, kids used to joke about that. And then it started to become normalized. But before that, no one believed that a normal person could just go psychotic. It's ridiculous. So I decided to ask my dad, my father, the metallurgist. He's not a psychologist or a psychiatrist, but he's been around and he pays attention. So I sent him a basic question because he's been around, and I wanted to get an opinion from somebody who wasn't me, who was older than me, who would tell me one way or another what they remember as the facts. So I wrote, question, was it an accepted idea back in the 50s and 60s that normal people could just snap and have psychotic episodes? Then I wrote, for example, a person has been totally normal their entire life, no history of violence, no history of mental issues, and out of nowhere they allegedly stab a stranger in a parking lot with zero provocation or motive, then take off. And I was giving him the Michael Cravey example without saying Michael Cravey's name. I waited a little while and I received this as an answer. I've never ever heard of such a thing. And then he continued on, and I knew some crazy people that I was afraid of, and they never even did anything like that. This is where I continued. I wrote, exactly, but in a general way, the idea that a normal person can have a psychotic episode was not accepted as reality, right? And he wrote, that's right. And it's funny because right after we were talking about this, the Michigan family was on the run. And if you haven't heard about that, the guy and his family were running from Michigan because the guy believed that he had information about 9/11 and people were trying to kill him. Do you think he just made all that up in his head? There's more to that story, and I guarantee you, once we get into that and know more about it, it's going to turn out to be one of these cases, one way or another. So no, normal people cannot just have psychotic episodes from nowhere. Whoever you are, and you're absolutely and totally full of shit, and you're believing a false narrative. So how do you subvert the past? When we're living in the now, how do you subvert the past? Well, you just make a movie And people are always like, that's just like that movie. And guess what? That's exactly what happens. So when the Fight Club alter egos and people who snap and kill people isn't enough in the present time, you need to go back and convince people it was happening then. So what do? You make a movie like Shutter Island here with Leonardo DiCaprio. He's a guy at a mental institution back in the 50s. As the movie goes on, he's got some one of these secret window / Fight Club style alter egos that he doesn't know he has, because he went crazy because his wife snapped and murdered all 3 of their kids, and he found him like that, and then he goes crazy. For these stupid TV people, it leaves them with the idea that of course this happened in the past. Of course it did, when it didn't. And to prove my point, here's a schizophrenic person from 1960. A schizophrenic person.
What sort of shape were you in that they felt you had to stay?
I was just real nervous and weak.
Yeah.
And he was afraid that I was having diarrhea and vomiting. And he was afraid I might faint and be alone and hurt myself some way, and no telling when somebody would find me. So he decided that he'd just go ahead and stay on in the hospital.
I see. Your trouble, the thing that brought you to the emergency room, was that you were having diarrhea and vomiting?
Mm-hmm.
How long had you been having that?
Well, I had it quite often, off and on, all the while. See, I had been out to the Baptist hospital. I say out. You know, I don't mean anything by saying out. I had been out to the Baptist hospital, and I live right behind the Baptist hospital. I said, run over to the hospital and get a drip or something like that. I asked Willard, Willard, if I need to go to a mental institution, I said, well, don't you think it'd be better to go to the university hospital than to go to a private institution or some other kind of institution? I said, you scare me to death, put me out of Whitfield.
Right, this woman makes more sense than half the people out there. She can articulate herself better than half the people out there now. These aren't people who were snapping in 1950s or 1960 and murdering their whole families. It didn't happen, but that's how they subvert the past. You get some movie like Shutter Island that puts it back in the past and convinces all these TV heads that this is exactly what was going on back then. It just wasn't happening as much or something, right? Didn't happen then, and it doesn't happen now, naturally. It's the same reason why they digitally started adding chemtrails to video games and old movies and a bombardment of media in general. It works on these people, and they believe it. They believe it was always there. It's subtle, but it's effective. And that's why Leonardo DiCaprio spent a whole movie chasing around Latest in the 1950s, whether he realized it or not. If I were you and I were questioning this, I would find an older person who does not have a dog in the fight, who isn't depending on the psychiatric industry to put food on the table, or the medical industry, or any one of these industries, and then ask them these same types of questions, and I guarantee you, you will get the same answers. As long as they don't have a dog in the fight, you're going to get the same answers. Now, a couple weeks ago, I put out a video called Who? Weaponized RF / ELF. Who's doing this? Because that's a common question, and it's a common question as well from shills, moles, trolls, operators, whatever you want to call them. They usually ask these types of questions in the comments because they know that it can't be answered in the comments properly. And they're waiting for somebody to come in and say, it's UPS, or it's, it's the Social Security Administration, or it's just the NSA. Or they're waiting for these unreal sounding answers from people. And it can't be answered in a comment or a reply. It just cannot be. So what we're going to do is, we talked about who, and now we're going to get into another question that they always ask, and that is why. Why are they doing this? Why are they doing this to people? Because they expect people to be able to answer that in a short response as well, which it is totally impossible. But that's the trap, because you can only talk about X amount of things in a response, and it's one response. Why would you spend an hour writing an essay for somebody for a response? And they ask it all the time. These are questions that are asked all the time. And you know, a lot of people have been contacting me lately and saying, well, I'm not a troll or a mole, and I've asked those types of questions. Well, you don't get it. People have been asking these questions since this channel went up, before my channel went up. People have been asking these questions, and they continue to ask the same questions. And the people that do it, the same accounts will go to the same videos for 6 months and ask the same questions over and over and over on the same videos, and then they'll vanish and a new sock puppet will jump up and they'll ask the same questions over and over and over. So it's not the person that is going to these videos and asking it one time that is making the shill and the mole radar go off. It's a handful of sock puppets asking the same questions over and over and over on these videos. It's absurd. Whenever I use the term they in this video, I'm referring to anybody involved in full spectrum dominance. Anybody. That could be the NSA, Meta, Boeing, NASA, the Cubes, DARPA, HARP, Lockheed Martin, anybody. Anybody involved in full spectrum dominance is part of this. So let's get into it. Why are they doing this? Why would they do it to anybody? Why would they do it to the guy down the street? Why would they pick on some stranger? Why would they pick on some little guy? Well, there's a method to the madness. You know, they can't always be whistleblowers or truth tellers or political dissidents. There's a method to the madness and a reason why average people are hit with these weapons all the time. It doesn't take a spook in a tree. It's not 1965 anymore. The original goal of RF weapons, voice of God weapons, was to create assassins. Plain and simple. It was designed to drive people to do something that would normally be against their will. That's it. But RF weapons in general became an entire industry. An industry. I've told people in the past that the motives are like an octopus, and it's absolutely true. So here is my little octopus graphic, and then you have the tentacles. Let's go over some of the reasons why these weapons are used. Why are they used to hit Joe Blow down the street? Why are they used to hit political dissidents? Why are they used to hit random people? Why are they hitting housewives with these weapons? Why are people subjected to weaponized RF? Well, we have subversion of the psychiatric industry, which is a big one. We have subversion of the medical industry. It is used to create funding. It is used for terror and the illusion of terror. It is used to feed future technology and AI learning. It is used to create political and social narratives. And it is used as a eugenics style weapon of war. Those are the main reasons why this is used. So let's get into the details of what's up with this. What do I mean when I say subversion of the psychiatric industry? It's exactly what we were talking about at the beginning of this video. People did not believe 30, 40 years ago, 50 years ago, that people just snapped. It was unheard of, and nobody even bought that. But now you have people lapping that idea up all the time. How? How did they do that? They were able to convince people that that exists, that people can just snap by using these weapons on average people. And people will snap and people will believe it. They can make people believe that somebody can be totally normal at 35 and then suddenly begin to hear voices. They can make people believe any number of these things that aren't real in nature. They do not exist in nature, and they can make people believe that because they have subverted the psychiatric industry. And that's a huge, huge part of all this. So not only does it subvert the psychiatric industry, it also subverts the pharmaceutical industry. So you have the medical industry, the psychiatric industry, and the pharmaceutical industry all hand in hand being subverted by these weapons. And they don't just cause voices, they cause chronic fatigue syndrome, depression, quote-unquote bipolar. Electromagnetic frequencies are the cause of a good 90% of the symptoms out there that people are feeling. even medical problems like artificial tinnitus or phony arthritis symptoms because your joints are swelling, or symptoms as though somebody is going senile or dementia, and it's being caused by RF. So you have subversion of the psychiatric industry, subversion of the medical industry, and ultimately subversion of the pharmaceutical industry, because there's a pill for everything. They're creating the symptoms to everything, and they are curing it with their medications. In reality, they're just masking the symptoms. And all these things are not conditions. Like if somebody feels like they're having ups and downs and problems, like bipolar, it is being caused due to RF. And it's just a symptom. These are symptoms of a bigger problem that people are not aware of. So there's a huge boatload of why just right there. Now, it's used to create funding. You want to get into Aaron Alexis, you want to get into James Holmes, you want to get into Myron May, you want to get into Cho. What about the girl, I don't remember her name, the woman who went and pew-pewed up YouTube? She was dealing with it. And then what do? Homeland Security and all these different organizations use it to create funding, because they're like, look, we got all these crazies out there. Got all these crazies with weapons, and we need more money to guard and fight these people. We need to put up, electronic surveillance everywhere. So it is used to create funding for everything. Federal funding, security. They're using it as an excuse to spy on you and look into you, and pre-crime policing and mental health Gestapo bullshit. We have all these kids that can't focus on anything. You have all these kids with all these different neurological issues that are clearly from the toxins in the food, but coupled with the RF, then you've got an atomic weapon. So you have subversion of the psychiatric industry, of the medical industry, of the pharmaceutical industry, and then it is all used together to create funding to get more surveillance, to get more federal policing, to spy on you more. More Patriot Acts fund. So it's an octopus of uses. Another reason that they use these weapons to drive people to do insane shit is because of demographics. Back in the day, these mass pew-pews were just called gang shootings, and it took a tweak of reality to change who did these types of things, what type of people did these types of things, how do they do it, blah, blah, blah. These weapons really flooded the gates, so to speak. Then we've got used for terror and the illusion of terror. They don't want you feeling safe. You need to be scared when you go to the movies. You need to be scared when you go to the grocery store. Just go into the grocery store, go into King Soopers, and you never know if a gunfight's going to break out or some shit like that. Have you noticed that it's been shopping centers a lot lately? In Colorado, you had those King Soopers, and then all of a sudden, that kid in New York. Before, it was schools, then it was, movie theaters and other bullshit. And they keep dipping back into schools, but they want you in fear when you are doing anything. Washing your car at the car wash, it does not matter. They want you in fear. So it is used for terror and the illusion of terror. And you never know, because you just don't have people like that. You have people road raging all over the place, because these frequencies put people on edge, even if they aren't being overtly affected by it, even if they aren't overtly hearing voices. They are running around angry, frustrated, and just pissed off. It's insanity. Now, after all that, it feeds future technology and AI learning, because these chatbots are throwing back information back and forth and trying to sound more and more human all the time, with as many of them operating at once as possible. So you have all these different AI configurations, learning subvocal speech, learning what to respond back to, learning what to respond to and how to get it correct, how to read what they are saying as correct. When you talk to a lot of the victims of these technologies, some people hear chatbots that are more human sounding, Some people hear chatbots that are more robotic sounding. Some of them sound like aliens or Darth Vader or lollipop people. And when you talk to them, some of them have very high-tech chatbots that sound as though they can truly understand and communicate with the person, where other people are hooked up to sort of old dumb tech that gets stuff wrong all the time, like it is trying to guess, but it is wrong. And that's what they don't tell you. A lot of these quote-unquote crazy people are being tormented by something that is getting the information wrong a lot of the time. Now that is very suspect and very funny at the same time. So it feeds future technology and AI learning. I have a video up on my channel, and you can actually research it anywhere you want, where Mark Zuckerberg is going around talking about the fact that artificial telepathy is the communication in the way of the future. These companies have whole entire departments dedicated to this stuff. Completely and totally dedicated to it. They are feeding massive amounts of money into this, and to get it correct, it has to be correct and it has to learn. So what they are doing is they are hooking up people to these virtual phone calls that do not take telephones, just like what Mark Zuckerberg is talking about. It is reading the subvocal speech of a person. So they basically hook these people up to a phone call that they cannot hang up on. We now have the ability to talk someone to death. And hopefully they'll have a mental diagnosis or do something or get themselves put in prison before it comes to light. So this feeds future technology and AI learning. Big time. Now, creates political and social narratives. And this is huge. You want a political narrative or a social narrative. Let's name a couple. Guns are bad. Guns are bad for people, and guns have to go. We don't need guns. Myron May, how did he get that gun? How did a guy like that get that gun? Aaron Alexis, how did a guy like that get that gun? James Holmes, how did those people get those guns? And then it becomes about the guns, because nobody realizes that this quote-unquote nutter was perfectly normal before they were attacked with RF weapons. It comes down on the guns. It comes down on the mental health narrative. So creating political and social narratives are easy. And this whole subversion of the psychiatric industry and subversion of the pharmaceutical industry goes hand in hand with creating the political and social narratives that they're creating today with these weapons. This is what they do. So it's all about the nutters and how are the nutters getting these guns. And they're changing the entire definition of mental health. Like before, a mentally well person was just somebody who didn't have problems. Now they're saying, oh, but it's all about everything. Your total mental wellness. You know, you can't be thinking bad things or thinking bad thoughts. It's a total social wellness as well as a not just being sick. You know, that's literally what they're doing, is changing the definition. And they are creating all this with these weapons, because these weapons create all of it, even the small stuff. So it all ties in together. And then at the bottom you have eugenics and you have weapons of war. So if you're a problem for the system, or you're a drag on the system, you can just drop now, or you could just have a heart attack, or you could have whatever, or you could just get sick and die, and it will appear as though it was just a natural thing if you didn't know any better. There's a million different ways to use this. You could use this against political dissidents, whistleblowers, and this is where other people come in as well, because then you have weapons of war. If somebody is labeled a terrorist in the 21st century, well, they have to be taken out. Well, how are you going to take them out? They're going to try to avoid sending in a team of jackbooters in to fuck you up. They're going to either drive somebody mad or kill them with these weapons. So that's where that comes in. Then political dissidents, whistleblowers, and truth tellers are then targeted with these weapons as well. It's an entire package. And once you understand that and understand how it is being used and why it is being used, this is the why. It can't always be political dissidents. Not when there's an agenda to create political and social narratives and subvert the psychiatric industry. the medical industry and the pharmaceutical industry, they have to have average people having the same things happen to them. So somebody can say, oh yeah, I know my neighbor up the street, yeah, he started feeling weird and he's got ups and downs now, and then he hears voices once in a while, but this is what they're doing. So average people have to be targeted as well as the dissidents. So once you get it, and you look at all this, it is very, very easy to understand. It all ties in together. And there are people waiting to make money off this. Just like the internet. The internet was around for decades and decades and decades. They figured out a way to weaponize it in a civilian sense and get people using it. And they are doing the same thing with what they refer to as artificial telepathy. And they're also using it for medical research and all kinds of shit. Why do you think your phones are taking your vitals all the time? You know, pretty soon your blender or your refrigerator is going to be taking your vitals before you can get something to eat. It's insanity, but that's the way it is. And that's what's going down. And it's all going down because of this. This is all one system. And your smart meter and the entire smart grid, human body communication, all of it is tied into this. And artificial telepathy is tied into all of this. So what does it equal? It equals total control. When a chatterbot is talking to somebody, from the time they lay their head down and fall asleep until the time they wake up, that's a good 6 to 9 hours of being chatted to a night while the person is out in a hypnotic state in sleep. And then you have these weapons affecting the health of people all the time, making them feel like total shit. And then when they are really weaponized, you can turn people into the Aaron Alexis, James Holmes, Myron May type scenarios. And then you've got all your narratives and all the subversion that you want. Having full control or full influence of a human mind, of every human mind, is a giant amount of power, especially when the people do not realize that they are being manipulated. It's huge. Now, when it comes down to a personal level, and let's say you're taking out a whistleblower or a dissident or a terrorist, well, you've got something there too, because it's personal. When they take those people out and they drive them to do insane things or look insane, it destroys the legacy as well. It destroys the legacy of the person. So as a weapon of war, it decimates people. So from now on, when people ask those questions, send them to this video. This is why they're doing it. And that's it for now. Look out for Charlie.
We must fight to regain our freedom, or everything is lost. Everything!
Everything is fine. Everything is fine. Everything is fine. Everything is fine. Everything is fine.
Lookoutfa Charlie.